Hello Stampers, and welcome to Laura's Stamp Pad. Today I just wanted to show some tips and tricks that I have found in my craft room, and I usually try to share them with my stampers whenever I'm at classes and stuff, but I thought I would do a little compilation video to share them with all of you. So I hope you find some of these to be handy, and of course if you have any tips and tricks that you would like to share, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. So definitely let me know if you have any crafting tips and tricks. So all of the tips and tricks use the crazy products that I have in front of me here. So let's get started. So one of the first things I wanted to show was the fine tip glue pen. So I know that it's got that fabulous fine tip, but sometimes it can be so difficult to try to get that needle back into the tip. I find that the best way to do it is to sort of place your finger along the back side of that and use your finger as a guide to slowly, allow that pin to go back in. If you're just trying to stick it in like this, it's really hard to line that up. But using your finger as a guide makes it so much easier for you to be able to get that pin lined up, and then you can screw the cap back on and keep it nice and secure with the pin inside so that then it doesn't clog. So that's my first little tip on the fine tip glue pen. One of the other tips I have is whenever you have something that you're watercoloring, then of course you could always squish the ink pad to the inside of the lid of the ink pad, but that can sometimes make a mess, and if you don't want to make messes on there, or you don't want to keep your ink pad open forever while you're coloring and everything, then what I simply do is I take a clear block and just press the clear block into the ink pad, and then now this is my little color palette. So I can close the ink pad and set it aside, and then I can take my aqua painter or blender pen or whatever I'm using and use that as my color palette. Of course you can always ink up just half of it and then add some water to the other half so that you can really dilute the color or change it up, or add it however you wish, but then you can use that as your ink palette. And of course it's always quick to clean, because you can simply run it under water, clean it with a baby wipe, use some alcohol, or even rub it over your Stampin' Scrub pad, which is another thing that I was going to show you. Your Stampin' Scrub pad does have the little water droplets on this side, and then of course the little sun on this side. So of course you spritz this side to wash your stamps, and then use this side to dry them. Now I know there's sometimes that it seems like washing it on here makes it even dirtier than if you were to just leave it alone, and that's because of course ink does collect onto the pad. So simply run it under some water until the ink runs clear. Of course mine, whenever I run it, it usually comes out black for a while, and then eventually the water runs clear, and then I just either set it outside to dry or maybe on like a vent in my house so that it'll dry a little bit faster. But that's a great way that you can clean your Stampin' Scrub so that it will clean your stamp sets better in the future. One of the other tips that I have is using your paper snips. So your little paper snips as tweezers for little things like your pearls and rhinestones or enamel shapes. Just simply go right underneath the little pearl and then set it on your project, place your finger over the top, and pull the scissors out. And then you have that perfectly placed little pearl. Boy, doesn't he look so small on the screen there. So yeah, just simply go right underneath it and pick it up. And of course, yep, it did come off my tablecloth just perfectly. And then place it down. So then that helps to avoid the pearl coming off of the little adhesive dot. And of course, it also allows for great placement, because sometimes when you're placing it like with your fingers or it gets stuck in a fingernail, then you don't actually have the placement right. Whereas this, you can set it right over the top of where you want it, place your finger on top, and then pull the scissors out. So those are great. Of course, you could always use tweezers or something, but you may not have tweezers in your stamp room. Now for the next tip, you will want to go get your tweezers. So for your blender pen, sometimes if you press too hard, or the tip ends up falling down into the blender pen mechanism some, then you can simply take a pair of tweezers and grab a hold of the point and pull it back out. So all is not lost if your your little blender tip ends up getting pushed back up into it. So don't worry about that. You can simply use your tweezers to pull it back out. So of course you can go get your tweezers from your bathroom or wherever you store your tweezers for that little tip and trick. The next one that I have is whenever you have a framelit that you're afraid keeps moving around on your Big Shot plate whenever you go to line it up, or you just want to make sure that it is nice and perfect on your project because you've already stamped it and everything else. So one of the things that I like to use is either a Post-it or Post-it note tape. So I have found that Post-it note tape is kind of hit or miss. I usually can find mine at a big box store, but sometimes they don't always have it there, so you can always look at like an office supply store as well. But this is perfect because it's not super sticky like painter's tape is, and so you can simply just add it to your project like this. Run it through the Big Shot, and then usually, even though sometimes it does kind of start to tear right there on the edge because it starts to actually cut, but then usually I can just pick this up, put it on the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Another thing that I've used it for is whenever I used this on a card front, I actually put the Post-it note tape on either side and made little marks so that I knew where the center of my card was. So whenever I was die cutting multiples, I knew I just needed to line that up with those little marks rather than actually having to line it up every single time and measure it every single time. So there's a little trick using Post-it note tape, or of course you could always just use regular Post-it notes as well to secure that framelit to your project so it won't move whenever you run it through the Big Shot. So I hope you enjoyed all those little tips and tricks of different things that you can use in your stamp room to either fix things or make things better or easier. And I hope you enjoyed those. Again, like I said, leave me some comments down below of any tips and tricks that you might have or that you've used before in your stamp room. I'd love to hear from you. Of course, check out my blog, laurastamppad.com, to check out other fabulous stamping ideas and more information about stamping. I will see you guys all next time. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new, and click over here to check out some other fabulous videos. Bye-bye, everyone. Happy stamping.